Hey guys, welcome back, it's Ripe again. In today's video, a new neighbor moved into our area and immediately claimed that my land belongs to her. She then put up a sign on my property that claimed that she is the new owner. Here is what happened. Let's dive right into the story. So I have lived in this rural area basically my whole life. My parents bought the place after we were evicted from our old apartment 20 years ago. Long story. Anyway, it was a huge gamble for them, city people, to up and move their entire lives to the middle of nowhere essentially. But it paid off and we enjoyed a comfortable lifestyle. They retired from work and downsized into a bungalow a few years ago. I expected to go with them, but instead they left me the house as a birthday present. Since then, life has been interesting and with little to no issues to speak of. I came to face my first real test of adulthood when I got a new neighbor next door. The previous owner was a sweet old lady who we got along with quite well, so her passing hit me quite hard. Eager to maintain a good relationship with the people around me, I introduced myself and offered a hand with her moving boxes. Karen was a woman in her early 50s who seemingly lived alone. I found her initially quite prickly, but assumed it to be because of stress or anxiety and giving her the benefit of the doubt. It was not until the following morning that I found out that she didn't live alone. I was outside for a break between my morning chores when I was approached by 3 large dogs that barked viciously at me, taking me completely by surprise. While I would usually call myself a dog lover, I was immediately scared for my life as they looked like they were about to pounce. Suddenly shuffling around the side of my house was Karen, who was charging after them. When questioned, she said that the dogs were hers and that they would not hurt a fly, even acting insulted that I would even suggest it. While our houses had previously shared a relaxed attitude to boundaries, I was starting to think that needed to change ASAP. With my panic levels steadily lowering, Karen stayed in conversation while her dogs explored my yard after losing interest in me. I was alerted to rustling from one direction as they started to climb through my vegetable garden, sniffing and biting at anything or everything. I raised my voice slightly to divert their attention, which worked for a brief second before Karen yelled back. Karen was furious that I would shout at her precious babies and denied that they were doing any wrong. I tried to explain about the garden, but she brushed off my complaints as her dogs continued to tear their way through it. In a burst of anger, I asked her to keep her dogs off my property in the future, but she just chuckled and sneered. Looking around mockingly, she said that she didn't see any boundaries to our yards, so they were free to move as they pleased. Before we got into an argument, she whistled, calling her hellhounds back to her. She gazed over me for a second in tandem with her dogs, sizing me up before walking away. I went back into the safety of my own home and worried about my next move against a stubborn and irritating neighbor. A few days of uneasy silence passed. Karen continued to cross into my yard on her regular walks, her dogs leaving devastation of poop in their path each time. I avoided confrontation with her, which may not have been the best move, as it certainly didn't stop or discourage her trespassing. After a long day at work, I'm driving home and craving a quiet meal by the TV, having reached a breaking point of stress. Pulling onto my driveway, my headlights flashed onto a wooden structure in the middle of my yard. It was a sign that had red paint scrawled across it saying, "Property of Karen Smith, no trespassing." I thought it must be some kind of mistake, but sure enough, there was a thick set of footprints in the mud from the sign that led to her house. Without thought for the time, I banged on the door, gaining an echoed response from a crowd of barks. A few minutes of persistence later, Karen emerged at the doorway very annoyed. I asked about the sign and she owned up to it, and she even claimed it was fine. When I started to get defensive about my yard, she opened the door a little more and threatened me with the dogs, who she knew scared me. As I left, she told me to stay off her property or else. With the situation only growing worse the more I tried to resolve it myself, I reluctantly followed parental advice and got the local authorities involved. I did not tell Karen this yet, as I could imagine the response from her, so I hoped to avoid any unnecessary crapstorm unless it was because I had already won. I sent a number of emails over the next few days, but after radio silence I gathered up the courage to call the office instead. While the young woman representing the local authority office was very sincere and sympathetic, she said that she was in no position to offer legal advice to me, recommending nearby attorney services if I chose to pursue that route. What she could offer though was a copy of my property deeds, which should prove ownership to Karen once and for all. And well, it meant one more confrontation, but if I could do this, it would surely get her to back down. I mean, why wouldn't she if I had proof, right? Anyway, I realized too late that my optimism was foolish. The proof did not seem to matter to Karen, and she was just as stubborn and threatening as ever. At this point, she must have felt pretty confident that she had me in a vice, but little did she know. When talking was no longer an option, I called 911 and waited at the window for the sirens. Along with trespassing and harassment, Karen managed to add resisting arrest and assaulting an officer to her growing list of charges. Luckily, the dogs were out of sight. I could only imagine the chaos they would bring to the already hot arrest. Taking up some previous advice, I got in touch with an attorney and we hashed out the details of my last few weeks in hell. Unsurprising to me, I was later informed that Karen had pled not guilty and was demanding to battle it out in the courts. That rash decision would end up being her undoing. With a week to prepare our evidence before the first trial, my attorney had managed to dig up a number of credible character witnesses from her past, former neighbors and friends, and it turns out that Karen had a habit for moving into a place and then attempting land grabs with suitable threats if she didn't get her own way. While no other neighbor had the guts to call her out for her BS, it looked like all it took was one domino to bring it crashing down. With my hard work, the other neighbors she harassed were jumping at the idea of joining the trial. My attorney turned it into a class action thing, he said. I did not really get it, but the way he worded it, the more we had on our side, the better it was. The trial was resolved in a single afternoon. With no need for a second date, the courtroom was packed but only one sat with Karen, which was her state-appointed attorney. After a bunch of testimonies, I got up to tell my events. I was nervous, but I tried not to ramble too much. When Karen entered the witness stand, she swore an oath to tell the truth and then lied through every damn word. In her story, I was harassing her after she lost control of her dogs and I moved the sign to my own yard to pick a fight with her. It was absolutely ludicrous and I could tell by her twisted smile that she got the reaction she wanted. Luckily for me, it was not enough to outweigh everything we had against her. Karen was forced to pay restitutions in property and emotional damages, and she was led out of the courtroom fighting and screaming about injustice. Karen's house was emptied of its assets as she couldn't afford the fine. Her attorney asked me once to dismiss it on her behalf, but I gladly denied. I was a little concerned that her dogs may be rehomed or put down because of her crimes, but it was only temporarily. Karen did not speak a word to me after the trial, all the way up until she moved out of the neighborhood and listed her property on the market. I guess she was forced to sell and downsize, but karma is a bitch that way, I guess. Moral of the story, mess around and find out. And yeah, ripe stars, if you have enjoyed the stories until here, please don't forget to like the video and maybe post some star emojis in the comments because it would help me tremendously. Thank you so much, and the next one is titled, I won a car, but what should I do? So I, 23 female, won a brand new compact car in a raffle I entered a few weeks ago at a trade show I was at for work. Which is awesome, but I already have an older car that I really like, and I just finished paying it off so I can finally pay the cheaper liability-only insurance. Basically, my car still has a lot of life on it. It only has about 100,000 miles, and if I were to choose a brand new car, it would not be the one that I won. I did some research, and after taxes and shipping, I can make about 14 to 15k from selling the car. That money would be an incredible just start after graduating college. It would more than triple my savings. Well, my boyfriend, 25 male of a little over a year, has been without a car for a few months. He's been struggling a bit financially, so he has not gotten a new one yet, but he can walk to the grocery store and he gets a ride to work and I drive anywhere else. It's worked out fine so far and I really don't mind, and he helps out with gas and driving. For background, he lives with friends and I live with my dad for free, so I'm able to save up money. I definitely see a future with him, but we are not at the point where we have talked about moving in together yet, but we are very serious. I went to a gathering at his parents' house last night. His whole family has been wonderful and welcoming to me, and everyone congratulated me on winning the car. But everyone, including my boyfriend, seemed to think logical and obvious step was to either give it to my boyfriend or give him my car and keep the new one. I don't plan to do either of these things. It would be different if we were married or living together and our money was mixed together, but it's not. We are not at that point in the relationship yet, and I don't want to give him what would essentially be $15,000 in cash. It doesn't make any sense. If I'd won the money instead, there wouldn't be any talk of just giving it all to him. That car and the resulting money would be mine. It's not my responsibility to provide him with a free car, whether it be my $5,000 car that I really like or this brand new one. For the dinner at his family's house, I just stayed quiet because I was so shocked at their assumption and didn't want to rip it away from him in front of his entire extended family. How do I break this to him and his family that his car and the money from it is not in any way his? And yeah, ripe stars, let me know in the comments what you think about this story. Is OP the a-hole here for not instantly giving the boyfriend the new car or not? Let me know what you think in the comments. Update: so the day after the family gathering, where everyone assumed I would just let my boyfriend use the car for free, I had to drive into the city where I won the car to sign a bunch of paperwork and pay some fees. We both had the day off, so I texted my boyfriend and asked if he would like to come along so we could walk around the city and go out to eat afterwards. He agreed and I picked him up. We hadn't talked about the night before at all. He asked general questions about what it was that I had to do today, and I explained that, and then I explained how the taxes on the car were going to be several $1,000s, but luckily I could cover them with my savings until I got the money for selling the car, and hopefully it would come out to around 14 to 15k based on my brother's calculations. He was quiet for a minute and asked, "Don't you want to keep it?" And I said no, that I was happy with the older, bigger car I currently have. It better suits our needs and I can pay cheaper insurance on it because it's paid off. He said that he didn't realize the taxes would be so much. It was awkward in the car for a moment and I finally just asked, "Did your family think I would give you the car to use?" He said his mom told everyone right before I got there that we, meaning boyfriend and I, won the car and that he'd finally have something to drive. He said that he didn't think I would do that, but he assumed I would keep the new car simply because it was new and that maybe I would let him use my car if he took over the insurance payments. But then he very quickly said that he didn't realize the taxes would be more than a few $100s. I guess his train of thought makes sense given what he assumed about the cost. He agreed that it made the most sense to sell the new car, and I asked if he was gonna explain that to his mom, and he said that he would, and that she views the two of us like a married couple already because she wants that so badly for him and has been heavily pressuring him to propose to me. That I didn't know of. Neither of us are at a point when we are even remotely ready for that, and we are happy with where we are right now. He promised he'd talk to his mom and explain everything to his family and that he would not let any of them think less of me. I was worried about that. So he waited patiently while I dealt with the company running the raffle. It ended up taking over 3 hours and then we had a nice time strolling around the city and I treated us to a very nice dinner. Anyway, the next one is an Am I the Jerk story. I have moved out 3 times so far. I moved away to California for a year and a half after high school, it didn't work out, moved back home. After a few months I got a place a couple towns over with 3 roommates. 2 of the roommates left halfway through, forcing us to break the lease because we couldn't afford it, so I moved back home. Moved out a 3rd time after a couple months and did a year lease with my best friend at an apartment in the same town and then moved back home after because I'm leaving in 5 months to move to Georgia with my current girlfriend and nobody will sign a 5-month lease. I don't feel great about it, but I'm 23 and for the 3rd time I've been forced to move back in with my parents. So yesterday I was out shoveling the driveway so it would be done before my parents woke up. The next door neighbor was out too and he comes over and asks me how things are going. He very quickly mentions how I am too old to still be living with my parents. I'm already embarrassed enough by it as it is, but I know I have solid plans to move out again in 5 months. I did not think this was worth mentioning to him as I feel like he has no business caring about his next door neighbor's life. I get heated very quickly because I was honestly taken back by his comment. I stop him mid-sentence and mention to him, "Doesn't your daughter still live with you? Your daughter who's like 35? Your daughter along with her husband and like what, 5 or 6 kids? Don't they still live here with you?" He starts yelling that I am rude to mention that, how it's not the same thing, how they have kids and it's a different circumstance, etc. I'm getting more and more frustrated. It's 7 in the morning and I have work in an hour. I decide to just walk away and continue shoveling when I see him start to effing fling his driveway snow into my driveway. I'm like, dude, what the hell? Are you 6 or something? My dad wakes up around this time and sees us outside arguing, so he comes out and starts arguing with him himself. I go back inside and get ready for work, and here I am after work wondering if I crossed the line by mentioning his daughter. I really don't think I did, but it's starting to eat at me a little bit. And yeah, ripe stars, let me know in the comments what do you think about this. Do you think that OP is the a-hole or not? In my opinion, OP was definitely not the a-hole because this is clearly a nosy neighbor that sticks his nose into affairs that have nothing to do with him, and he should just mind his own business. Honestly, I hate neighbors like that. What the hell does he have to do with OP? Why does he even care? Anyway, comment number 1 said, not the a-hole, what's the saying? Those who live in glass houses should not throw stones? Funny how his kid is at home, but that's somehow different. Isn't she too old to be living with her parents? Comment number 2, you are never too old to live at home with family. Nothing says that you have to ever move out. My parents took in my sister and her kids for 6 years. They moved out when my sister got remarried and moved for work. My brother lived at home until 29. They paid rent. Took care of things my parents couldn't do at their age. I stayed home until 24 for college and helping with my nana. She passed and I moved out. As long as you have your parents' blessing, you're fine. I mean, you woke up early to clean the snow. You seem like a good son, not the a-hole. And the next one is titled Homeowner Association Revenge. So, about 4 years ago, I used to live in a nice HOA in a small town in Texas and enjoyed having only one neighbor over my backyard fence. The plot was about 2 acres and the other side of the backyard butted up to a hayfield. The stars were beautiful at night because of virtually no light pollution. Until the neighbor decided to install an incredibly bright security light over their back porch aimed right at my back patio and bedroom windows. I tried to ignore it at first and put shades in the bedroom, but out on the patio it was like having a bright LED headlight in your face all night. I consulted the HOA about adding a privacy addition to my fence to increase its height, and they said no because it's already at the 8 feet maximum allowed height. They said that there was nothing in the bylaws or whatever about bright lights, so there was nothing they could do. So for diplomacy, I hated for this to be the thing where we finally had a formal greeting after 3 years of back porch waves, but I walked over and rang the doorbell with $20. I politely explained how the light was causing the aforementioned nuisance and asked if there was any way I could convince him to point the light down or in a different direction, and even offered them to buy him a case of beer, the $20 out of goodwill, and even a new motion sensing light. He seemed nice and agreed to point it down, but after waiting a month, nothing changed. I went back to have another polite conversation and he said he had changed his mind and was gonna leave it on every night and leave it pointed as it is. Petty revenge. Needless to say, I was a bit upset diplomacy failed and started figuring out how to win. If the military taught me anything, there's always ways to adapt and overcome. So I started researching fast-growing plans to create big privacy walls and reading through the HOA bylaws and city-state ordinances about what I could or couldn't plant, and if there were any repercussions for encroachment across the property line. I quickly discovered running bamboo, despite being very invasive, would grow super fast to make the neighbor's house and light disappear from the view, and there was nothing on the HOA, state or city books to prevent me from planting it or causing legal recourse if it spread and grew on his side of the fence. The only thing he could do is cut anything that grew on his side of the line. So I pulled the trigger and planted a bunch of golden bamboo, which grows and spreads crazy fast in Texas and grows up to 20 feet tall. I didn't care if it took over the fence line because his house is 15 feet from the fence while mine was 50 yards away, so I planted a bunch right against the fence and only put root barrier on my side to prevent it from spreading into my yard. Within 6 months his house and light were gone from the view, replaced by a pretty bamboo jungle row at the edge of my yard. Within 1 year he complained it was growing into his yard via mailed letters, but they went right into the trash with no response. He rang my doorbell once and I looked at him through the window, but just did not answer the door. I unexpectedly sold the house and moved 2 years after planting for a career opportunity, and it's been 2 years since then I sold, and I just checked the property on Google Earth and his entire backyard is now bamboo. The next one is titled Wholesome Revenge. Our 3 children have been social distancing at home since school closed in our state in March. And by the way guys, this is an older story from during the pandemic. Anyway, we got 3 children, Moody 15 female, Magellan 11 male, and the Dictator 4 male. The husband and I are essential workers and are gone a lot, and things at home have been collapsing into a pseudo Lord of the Flies. About Magellan, he is on the spectrum and is genuinely one of the nicest kids you will ever meet. He is kind, compassionate, absolutely brilliant, and will find something good about every person and every situation. His ability to find joy in small things makes me so grateful for him. He is the kid bullies will fight to protect. If he ever got into a fight, he would literally say, "That was bad and I'm upset. The kid looked really nice today before he hit me." I say all of this to say that it takes a lot to piss Magalan off, but if you do, the result will be a precisely calculated revenge plot. Anyway, the husband and I keep telling Moody not to ask the boys for their snacks. She is the oldest and the boys adore her. This usually results in her getting whatever she asked for through some combination of harassment, manipulation, and guilt. It's not fair to them and we wanted to stop, but with work we are just not at home to see it all. On Friday, she asked Magalan for the chocolate milk that came in his lunch delivery. He said no, and she started her 2-day campaign of harassment, none of which we knew about until Sunday night, when she asked in front of us for the chocolate milk. Magalan looked disappointed, said fine, and handed the milk to his sister. It happened so fast that we didn't even react. She slunk off to the kitchen to enjoy the spoils of her victory. Magalan did nothing once she left the room but sit on the carpet and smirk. What Moody never stopped to consider was that Magalan hates chocolate milk. He hates it so much in fact that he never bothered to refrigerate the carton. He instead stashed the chocolate milk in a bookshelf and let it cook for 2 days, all the while she harassed him. The calm demeanor and the smirk on his face was him simply waiting to hear the screaming coming from the kitchen when she opened the carton and took a sip. Moody did not let him down. Within seconds, screaming erupted from the kitchen, punctuated with gross, disgusting, and "Oh my god, Magalan!" Magalan did not move from the carpet and instead sat still and said in the quietest voice, "Little Miss Muffet sat on a tuffet eating her curds and whey," before bursting into maniacal laughter. It was glorious. He exploited her obnoxious behavior and coolly planned his vengeance. He felt the teenage monster in a way that the adults have not come close to. I am damn proud of that boy. And yeah, Ripe Stars, let me know if you have ever gotten similar satisfying petty revenge on someone in your family. And yeah guys, if you cannot get enough of my content, please don't forget to check out my podcast by searching for Ripe Stories on all major podcast platforms such as Spotify, Apple or Google Podcasts. Furthermore, you can find bonus content by going to patreon.com/ripeyoutube or by clicking the join button here on YouTube. For a small monthly fee, you will get access to dozens and dozens of exclusive videos you won't find anywhere else. Thank you so much for watching and I hope to see you again tomorrow.